Okay, what I'm doing right now is adding land to this route so I can add tracks to it. I'm adding enough track that the train can get up to speed before it gets to the railroad crossing. Usually I add 12 blocks of land on each side of the area that has scenery on it. This is usually enough for the train to get up to speed. So while I'm doing this, interesting fact, when I was at the hiring session for Norfolk Southern, the guy actually said that of every 10 people they hire, 4 of them fail, and then he asked us to guess what usually caused it. Apparently, 2 of every 10 they hire fail because they're not used to that kind of lifestyle of being on call. But the other 2 fail because they literally just don't show up for work. Apparently, they get the idea that because there's no supervisor, they can not show up for work and still get paid, but eventually they get found out, obviously, because the train they were supposed to move is still in the yard, so they end up getting fired. I was shocked when I heard the second part, because I'm thinking, why would anyone just not show up for work and expect to get paid for it? Interestingly enough, when they were explaining to us what the training was going to be like and what our lifestyle was going to be like, one guy actually raised his hand and said he doesn't think he's ready for this kind of lifestyle. So he actually left. Now, when he did that, I couldn't help grinning because I'm thinking, haha, more jobs for me then. But seriously, that was actually quite surprising to see someone get up and just say that they weren't ready for that. Right now, I'm using very low detail tracks for the areas leading up to the railroad crossing. The reason why I do that is because it's not very much of a point in having high detail track in areas where the camera is not even going to be looking. The other reason is whenever I lay down these high detail tracks that come with the game and use them for very long distances, the fan on this computer gets really, really loud and it starts sounding like it's having an asthma attack. So, to help with that, I'm using low detail tracks whenever I can. If I use high detail track, it slows the game down a lot. Okay, it's finally time to program the railroad crossing. I will need 5 controllers for this specific crossing. 1 to control the gates, and 4 other controllers for each individual track to control the flashers on the middle tracks. Channel 1 is going to control all the gates on this crossing as well as the cantilevers on the outside of the crossing. Now, Channel 2 is going to be used for a little experiment I have. You see, the railroad crossing this is loosely based on, the inside lights on the cantilevers only flash if there's a train coming on that track. So if the crossing is activated, but the train is coming on one of the middle tracks, the lights on the inside of the cantilevers won't flash. So I'm trying to see if I can block those lights by putting these floating lights in front of them and having them only flash when a train triggers a crossing on that track. This is basically an experiment just to see if I can get it to do that. Channel 2 is going to be used for the flashers on this track. Okay, it looks like you can't control this ped gate from BNSF 50 to do anything besides raise and lower, so I'm going to use the ped gate from jointed rail, which you can control the flash intervals, how long it takes for the gates to come down and up, and so on. It looks like these floating lights are a little bit too small, so I'm gonna look for slightly bigger ones. When the train triggers this railroad crossing from this track, he will hit the channel 1 trigger to operate the gates, and he will hit the channel 2 trigger to operate the lights for that specific track, including the lights on the inside of the cantilever on this specific track. Hopefully, I'll still have to test it to see if it works. It just occurred to me that I forgot to program some traffic stoppers to stop the cars on this crossing. Now, traffic can always be a problem on this specific type of crossing because in this game, if a car is in the middle of the crossing when it turns on, they tend to stop in the middle of the crossing and then get hit by a train. How I used to fix that in older versions of the game was to put a spline point right before the traffic stopper. That would usually cause the cars to ignore it and they would keep going through the crossing until they got to the other side, while cars approaching the crossing would stop. But unfortunately, they fixed that problem on this game. So the cars will continue to stop at the traffic stopper even if there's a spline point right in front of it. So now I have to be clever and come up with a new way to fix this issue. What I usually do is I have one road leading to the crossing, and it's attached to the traffic stopper. On the other side of the traffic stopper is an invisible road that goes all the way to the other side of the crossing, so that the cars that are in the middle of the crossing aren't actually on the road. They're on an invisible road that goes in the same direction. Then on the other side of the crossing, the invisible road will reattach to the regular road, but it'll be slightly curved where they connect so that cars approaching the invisible road will ignore the junction and continue on the regular road to the crossing. To get cars to ignore the invisible road, I attach it so it's slightly to the right of the regular road, because the cars always take the road that's on the left when it's a junction. So this allows the cars to ignore the invisible road, stay on the regular road, and stop at the stopper, then drive onto an invisible road to drive to the other side of the crossing and come back to the regular road. It's really confusing. It's exactly as confusing as it sounds. I'm even getting confused trying to explain it to you how it works. This invisible road is attached slightly to the left of the regular road, because on junctions, the cars always take the path that's to the left. So the cars are going to go to the left and drive on the invisible road, and this is going to go all the way to the railroad crossing and the traffic stopper where they will stop. This invisible road does not attach to the traffic stopper on the far side of the crossing, therefore the cars cannot get stuck in the middle of the crossing. To prevent cars from driving onto this invisible road, this junction is attached to the regular road slightly to the right, so the cars approaching it will go left and therefore stay on the road. Meanwhile, cars coming from the railroad crossing will come back on the road using this invisible road. The obvious problem with this is because of this slight curve, the cars look like they're skidding out of control when they come back to the regular road. But sadly, there's not much I can do to stop that. It's either that or having them stop in the middle of the crossing. There will be no quiet zones on any of my railroad crossings. The trains will be blowing their horns at every single one of them. Whenever someone nearby complains about the noise, we always tell them the same thing. It's for your own safety. We also have a strict policy that we adhere to. Whoever was built first gets to call the shots. Now, this railroad was built way before the town was. So, obviously, it doesn't make any sense to tell the railroad that was here longer that they should be quiet for the town that just happened to have been built later on. When the house does go for sale in this town, however, there is a warning on the website stating that, warning, heavy railroad activity. The trains blow their horns nearby. So, it's up to you to make the decision to move here. If you don't like the noise, you shouldn't move here. Don't move near a railroad crossing and then complain about the noise. If you can't handle it, you might as well find a quieter place to live. To get the trains to blow their horns at this crossing, I use something called Invisible Horn Single Long Blast. You can find this on the download station. Just type Invisible Horn in the search engine. The train will blow their horn for as long as they come in contact with the trigger's range, which is one of the reasons I really like these triggers. You can make the train blow its horn for a longer period of time by having more triggers near each other. When the train finishes passing all of the invisible triggers, it will stop blowing its horn. You can also get them to ring their bell using something called Ring Bell Bidirectional, which is also on the download station. Just type Ring Bell in the search engine. A lot of you have been asking me how to set up the portal, so I'm going to go ahead and answer that question right now. So, before we get started, you should know that some trains will derail when they come out the portal, and there is nothing you can do about it, sadly. That's just a glitch that this game has. Though, so far, I haven't had any luck with the TGV duplex or any freight car that carries power utility poles. Now, if the train derails when coming out of the portal, or if any part of the consist derails when coming out of the portal, you'll notice that after it exits the portal, it will be traveling very slowly, and it will ignore everything. It won't blow its horn at the railroad crossings or ring its bell. It'll just travel slowly throughout the entire route until it gets to the portal on the other side. Now, to make a train produce a portal, to make a portal produce a train, you press the properties button, which is the question mark symbol. Then you click on the portal. You click the check mark for produce new trains. And make sure it's not set to consume trains. There's no need for it to consume trains if it's a producer. And I have a feeling that some kind of glitch might occur if you have it doing both. So just tell it to produce trains, then tell it when you want the first train to come out of the portal. I usually choose 1 minute to save time. Then tell it how often you want it to produce trains, which depends on the type of trains that are coming out of the portal. For passenger trains, 3 to 5 minutes seems to be fine. Freight trains need at least 6 to 7 minutes between each train being produced, or they'll start piling up and then slowing down the line. Now, after you tell it to produce a train, it'll give you the option to add a new consist. So I usually add a consist that already has a locomotive attached to it to save time, but you can also add individual train cars and locomotives by clicking on the plus symbol. I usually don't do that though because it takes longer. Now, the train won't be able to come out of the portal without a driver, so don't forget to click Add Driver to Consist and choose whatever driver you want to be assigned to that train. Then you have to give it a message. If it doesn't have a message, it'll just stay where it is when it comes out of the portal. And when you give it the message, it'll automatically do what you told it to do as soon as it comes out. I usually tell them to drive straight to the other portal, and they do that. So obviously I had to put another portal on the other side of the route and have that one set to consume trains. Okay, this video is getting kind of long, so I'm going to test the railroad crossing in the next video. However, there is one last thing you should know about the portals. Sometimes when the train comes out of the portal, it will ignore the first speed limit sign you give it. So, I usually put a ton of speed limit signs right after the portal to make doubly sure it actually listens to the speed sign and doesn't end up traveling down the line at 40 miles per hour. Usually I set the speed limit pretty high, the highest that the train can physically go, which for this railroad will be 70 miles per hour since it will be mainly freight trains. Though, freight trains where I live don't usually go that fast. However, when I was driving a truck in the western half of the United States, I did notice a lot of trains were going pretty fast. In fact, even traveling at 70 miles per hour, I couldn't keep up with a lot of them, traveling parallel to them on the highway. So there are places where they do go that fast.